to the Yahowah blog. I am your host, Craig Wynn, and we think this evening we have Kirk with us. At least I heard you before the show began. Kirk, are you there?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
All right. Well, I'm pleased to hear that. Let's hope. I'm going to bring it up on my side computer here just to verify that all systems are working the way they're supposed to. Well, I don't have your image, but we'll hope that it is appearing for others within the Covenant family. This is our Shabbat show. This is the program that we have done for better part of 15 years. The only difference is that we're now doing it via a audio and video presentation as opposed to strictly the audio presentation over the years. So that we get right to the heart of the matter, I'd like to pick up where we left off. I think it was on December 13th, several weeks ago, that we were last in Malachim, First Kings. We would have ended that program right around the midpoint of the 18th chapter. We're going to return today to 18:15 of First Malachim Kings, because what we're doing is we're using the story of Eliah when he confronted the 850 religious pseudo-prophets and also countered the political establishment of Israel and both Achab and Jezebel, and took them to task for their religiosity and for their politics. And one man, of course, on the side of God, with God as his co-worker and associate, bested the 850 prophets and the two politicos. And the reason this story is important, a whole lot of reasons this story is important. First of all, Eliah is one of the great prophets. He is the most satirical of all of those who spoke for Yahweh. He is the most entertaining of all those that spoke for Yahweh. Yahweh specifically took this man home, and we have to understand there's a reason for that. He loved Eliah's attitude, the way that he just roasted and grilled the religious, gave them no corner. And the other reason he took him home is because Eliah is returning. We know from Malachi, the last of the prophets, in the last chapter, we're told specifically that Eliah is one of the two final witnesses. And so Yahweh has given him a lot of time to prepare for his part. And the third reason we're going to consider this particular presentation is that when Eliah returns, for the first 3.5 years, he's going to do what he has always done. He's going to lambast religion, Judaism in particular. And while he's doing that, speaking for Yahweh, he is going to end his career as he began it here. There's going to be a reenactment of a bull on cedar planks surrounded by enormous amounts of water, and Yahweh igniting a flame. And that is the sacrifice of the red heifer, which is going to occur on Teruah, September 24th, 2033. Just 10 days before Yahweh's return with Dode. So we're telling this story so that you have a better idea as to what's going to happen on Teruah, because Teruah is an exceedingly important date. It's not only the final ingathering, where the last of the covenant members who are harvested. And this is important, even though it's only 10 days for the end. And I've had some people ask me, why would God bother with, a harvest 10 days before he returns? Well, the reason is during the 7 years of Jacob's trouble, there will be Yehudim and Israelites who will come to know Yahweh, who will come to accept the terms and conditions of the covenant, who will attend the Mikra as they were sanctioned by God. And they will become part of the covenant family. They are deserving of becoming seven-dimensional beings. They're deserving of being empowered and enriched by God. They should not be among that remnant who has not done so. And so God is removing them to emancipate them, to take them from being limited in the physical world to being spiritual beings that can go explore the universe. So it's an enormously important gift that he is providing to this last ingathering of Israelites. Because come the second part of Teruah, as the sun rises, a day that'll be a full eclipse, on September 24th of 2033, that day is the day that I will play the role of the sacrifice here in Eliah's story. And the purpose is presented not only in Numbers 19, Bamidbar in the wilderness, but also the beneficiary is the adulterous woman that is presented in Numbers 5. Because those who are not harvested, those who are not brought home as covenant members the evening before, becoming that part of that river of light going to Shamayim, they need to be cleansed. They need to be prepared for a number of things. And one of the things they're being prepared for is to be in Yahweh's presence, because in 10 days, God's returning with his son, Dod. And if you're not with him at that point, if you're not prepared to meet him at that point, you're just going to be extinguished in his brilliant light. So part of it is to prepare this final mortal remnant of Yisrael for the homecoming, the family reunion that'll take place on October 2nd, 6:22 p.m. in Jerusalem as the sun sets in year 6000 Yah. So that's part of it. The other part is that the Messiah, Dod, is the bridegroom that is presented throughout Numbers 5. The story of the adulterous woman is about a man who wants his bride back. And the man that wants Israel back is Dod. And so Israel is being prepared to be betrothed to its king, becoming royalty. So that is what is going to happen with the sacrifice of what's called the red heifer. It's actually Adam a Parah. Adam is a bloody red man of the earth. Parah means who is fruitful and productive. So this is the dress rehearsal for that, because there's very few things of consequence. I'm not sure there's any really of consequence that Yahweh has presented to us that doesn't have a dress rehearsal, if you will, a harbinger of what is to come, and then the actual event. And so in this case, this marvelous event that's going to take place on Teruah, it's going to be to the backdrop of a solar eclipse. Yada, who is the Adama Parah, I am the sacrifice in this particular case. I ask for a meeting with the corporeal manifestation of Satan, who is going to be in Jerusalem, countering everything that Eliah and I have tried to accomplish, trying to lead the final remnant of Yisrael astray, and those he can't lead astray, he's going to try to kill. And finally, on this day, after 3.5 years of opposing him, I'm actually going to have all of the Malak who have protected me up to this point, and the seven spirits of Yahweh who have enlightened me, emboldened me, empowered me, enabled me. I'm going to have them all stand down. And I'm going to do exactly as Eliah does here with Akab, where he summoned him. I'm going to summon the corporeal manifestation of Satan, and I'm going to allow him to bludgeon me to death. Because out of this sacrifice, Yahweh is going to do some magnificent things. First, he is going to have Eliah be the master of ceremony. No one speaks in a manner that is more compelling. He is the ultimate witness, and now this is the preeminent moment for the mortal remnant of Yisrael. The ultimate showdown, if you will, between the God of religion, Satan, and the actual God of the universe, Yahweh. Religion versus relationship. And Eliah is going to take my beaten carcass, and he's going to move it from the south end of the Temple Mount overlooking the city of Dode, and he's going to move it to where the courtyard of the original house for Yahweh's name once was. There will now be a replacement version, a reenactment, if you will, of the tabernacle of the restoring witness there. So it's going to be the backdrop, and before it, Eliah is going to place my body. It's going to be over a number of things, including the same amount of wood that was used in this particular dress rehearsal. He's going to toss things into that fire that tie this sacrifice into what Dode wrote about his sacrifice on Passover. So there's no mistaking the relationship between these two things. And then Yahowah is going to do one better than what happens here. Here there's many, many vessels of barrels, if you will, of water that are placed all around the wood, igniting the flame difficult so that it proves that Yahowah engaged to do it. But in this particular case, Yahowah is going to release enormous amounts of water from beneath this funeral pyre, and it's going to pour over the Temple Mount and wash through all of Jerusalem. And then he's going to ignite the fire himself. And the flames are going to blaze up to the heavens. And this mixture then of resulting ash, these searing and brilliant flames, Yahowah's voice as well is going to be added to the equation. It's the first time in 3,480 years that Israelites have actually heard Yahowah speak to them.
Yeah.
And the combination of the waters and the ash and the blazing, searing fire is going to cleanse this remnant of Israel and prepare them for the homecoming and the family reunion of Dode, the Messiah. And so this is the event that is so important here in the lives of Israel. And the dress rehearsal for it took place 2 millennia, 888 years prior to this event. And so we can learn a lot about the sacrifice of the red heifer by understanding what the same master of ceremonies is going to say and do based upon what he did 1,888 years ago. So Eliah said, "As Yahweh of hosts lives, whom I stand before, today I will surely see him." He's speaking of Ahab, who was the representative of Satan in Israel at the time. He was the king of Israel. He and his wife Jezebel represented the devil. This is Malachim, 1 Kings 18:15. It was essential to make the point that Yahweh was sending Eliah to meet with the devil. And this is because on the morning of Teruah in year 6,000 Yah, 2,888 years after this encounter, God's going to send his messenger, his voice today, Yada, to meet with Satan. Now, as this debate proceeds, we witness the oldest political trick in the book. Politicians almost always project their flaws and their vulnerabilities on their opponents in hope of confusing constituents and deflecting criticism away from themselves, muddying the waters while slandering their rivals. And so the text reads, Obadyahu. Obad means works with, and then Yahu works with Yahweh, walked to meet Ahab. And Ahab is father of the brethren. He is the person who is representing the religious and wayward children of Israel in their opposition to God. Their opposition by being religious. And he informed him of what Eliah had requested, this meeting. Then Ahab, father of the brethren, walked to meet Eliah. Now he saw that Eliah was his great nemesis. So the thing he wanted to do, he is king. He's all full of himself, all puffed up. I'm king. How dare you do this to me? And, try to put Elia under his thumb. Well, it's hard to
Good luck.
Yeah, hard to do when you're representing Yahweh. A lot of people try to put me under their thumb. And I tell you what, when you're
Ain't working.
when you're working on behalf of Yahweh, it's very difficult to work against said individual. And it's not smart. Yeah. Look what happened to those who opposed Dowd. It's just not a good idea. Look what happened to those who opposed Moshe. It's a really, really bad idea. It was, as it will be, of course, although next time Elia will be summoning Satan to meet with Yada. He, as the Adama Parah, this is Yada, myself, serving as the bloody red man of the earth who has been productive and who will be fruitful in this event, the red heifer, will offer his life to prepare the remnant of Yisrael to reestablish their relationship with Yahweh after 3,480 years of estrangement, after they told Yahweh, we never want to see you again, we never want to hear from you again.
Yeah.
Well, this is being resolved at this point. This is an exceedingly important moment for Israel. This is one of the most difficult things, Kirk, I think, that we have had to deal with along the way. We had no idea of what the role was of the Adama Parah, how it was dealing with the adulterous woman, how the groom that wants the adulterous woman is really Dowd, and how following this Teruah ingathering, there's this major event with the sacrifice of the red heifer and what it represents. And we didn't come to appreciate it until we were dealing probably with the 18th time from the ultimate prophet of Yahweh, Yahshua. Yahshua is the prophet who wrote the textbook on how to be a choder, how to do the particular job that I've been asked to do. And so he's really important because not only does he teach me what I'm supposed to do in this mission and how to perform it, he tells Yisrael what they should, upon what I say, how they should respond to this message. And what he said in the 17th chapter is that following this river of light that represents the ingathering of Yisraelites, this final gleaning, lakat of Yisraelites, as they stream to heaven as the sun sets on Teruah, a Shabbat or Friday evening on September 23rd, 2033, year 6000, is that the next day is going to be all about the Parah. Now, Parah has two very different meanings in Hebrew. Its primary meaning is fruitful and productive. But par is the Hebrew word for bull, and Parah is a heifer. It's a feminine bull, a cow. Now, you might say, "Oh, come on! How is a man going to be a represented by a feminine title?" But the fact of the matter is that Yahweh's name is feminine, and I don't think you want to go call him girly.
No.
No. And the fact of the matter is the most important title that has been afforded to three individuals, Moshe, Dowd, and myself, is Zeroah.
Yes.
In the case of Dowd, it means sacrificial lamb. In my case, it's one who cultivates the seeds of this harvest. It's a feminine term. Yahweh refers to his Bereth covenant. It's feminine. God's guidance and his instructions, Torah, is feminine. Yeah. Almost everything that's really important it has a feminine connotation. But the purpose of it is that this sacrifice provides new life, and it is the heifer that provides milk. It's the heifer that provides new life. And it's also part of the metaphor of not only life, but as a bull, I've been pretty rambunctious when it goes to trampling down demons, both spiritual and religious people acting as demons. I've been pretty successful at it and very bullish at it. But in my sacrifice, I have to be a sympathetic character. And so you got to take the horns away. You got to take the strength away. You've got to be vulnerable and susceptible. It's why Dod is the ultimate ram of Yisrael, as the ultimate lion of Judah was rendered a baby lamb at Passover. This is Yahowah's metaphor. So when the corporeal manifestation of Hasatan walks up to Yahowah's choder on the southern end of the Temple Mount overlooking the city of Dod, you might say, how do you know that? I'm going to tell you, I saw it. I've seen this whole event play out before my eyes. Now, normally, everything I have shared for the last 23 years, and Kirk, you've been with me this whole time, you know that I almost never share anything that's a private conversation with God, because there's no way for me to prove it.
Yeah.
And the validity comes not from private conversations, but from the prophetic pronouncements that Yahowah has made that are verifiable, that everybody can look up for themselves. You spent your first 5 years that we were together checking every word.
Every word.
To see if I was being correct in the translation. And you kept on doing it even after you found out, it's
fun.
I haven't found a mistake yet. He's telling me the truth, but it's still it's edifying.
It's gratifying.
Edifying, gratifying to continue to do it.
Verifies everything,
Yeah, so this is unique for me to share with you something that came in a private vision. But I guess if you're going to be scheduled to be bludgeoned by Satan,
we gave you,
might owe you one at that point.
I think so.
So anyway, he presented to me exactly how this is all going to play out. And subsequently, as I was translating some of the latter Mizmor to conclude the third volume of Coming Home, Dod Beloved, it's actually presented there, what I'm sharing with you. So I now know it. Well, I knew it to be true, because when we do have a private moment together, it's often quite inspiring. So I know that this is going to happen on the southern end of the Temple Mount. It's going to happen where the dome of, not the Dome of the Rock, but Alaska Mosque once stood. Alaska Mosque is going to be obliterated. The Dome of Rock is going to be obliterated. The Temple Mount is going to be clean at that point until Satan walks on top of it. And of course, he will infect the place, but he will bludgeon me overlooking the city of Dod. Dod is my king. Dod is the one that I serve. I am Dod's herald. I am, he's the boss. And so it is overlooking the city of Dod and his home further down on the ridge line of Mount Moriah that this is going to take place, because it really is in service to him, preparing his bride for his return. And therefore, when this occurs at the southern end of the Temple Mount overlooking the city of Dod, we're going to experience exactly what we read here, projecting on behalf of Israel what Satan's influence over his people's lives has done to them. And this will be his last hurrah. And you might say, all right, Satan's got to be smart enough to know that if he does this to you, it's the end, that the flames that shoot up are going to sear him. They're going to obliterate all of his Muslim and other little demon buddies that are there to kill Jews, that those that are they're hostile to Israel are going to be washed away, just as Israelites are going to be cleansed and purified by the same flame. Yes, I think he knows that's the end event, but he hates my guts. Now, it might sound egotistical to say this, but since God has made it so very clear in his testimony, I'm going to say it anyway. The primary reason that Satan doesn't prevail is because of what Yahowah and I have collaborated on together for the past 22 years. Had we not done this, there wouldn't have been a single Yehudim that knew and spoke Yahowah's name. There wouldn't be a single Yehudim that knew the terms and conditions. There wouldn't be a single Yehudim that knew the actual purpose of each of the 7 Moed Mikre and was celebrating them appropriately.
Correct.
There wouldn't be a single Yehudim that knew that Dowd was their Messiah, their king, and their savior. There wouldn't be a single Yehudim that would know the timing of these events. There wouldn't be a single Yehudim that knew that Dowd fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bakorim, or when Shabbat is going to transpire and how that begins the time of Yaakov's troubles and how it concludes with these events on Teruah, nor that Yom Kippurim is the day that Yahowah and Dowd return. Not one.
Yeah.
And if they didn't know these things, there would be none gathered at the homecoming. There would be none at the Shabbat harvest. There would be none at the Teruah ingathering. There would be none to benefit from the sacrifice of the red heifer. There would be none expecting Yahweh's return. They're celebrating it with Dowd on Kippurim. There'd be none to camp out with Yahowah come Sukkah. Now, this conclusion is presented in the last sentence of the last prophetic declaration that Yahowah made through a prophet in Malachi in the 4th chapter. At the very end of it, he says, if it were not for these events, I would have destroyed the earth. Be no reason to come back.
Wow.
So, this is actually very important. I did not seek this. Well, nobody goes off and say, hey, God, can you make certain that I'm bludgeoned to death and a gruesome sacrifice at the end of my life? That really sounds like that'd be a really fun way to go. No,
I liked what you said the first when you were talking about it, at least publicly. You said, yeah, good thing you didn't tell me, what you planned.
Yeah, of course.
Maybe, wait a minute, hold on.
Yeah. That was not our first meeting.
You didn't put that
years
in the
ago.
contract. Yeah.
You're sort of on a need-to-know basis as these things transpire. I mean, it's quite the awakening. But it's important for Israel to know that the person speaking to them has skin in the game.
Yeah.
I care so deeply about you. I'm laying down my life for you. And between now and then, I have devoted my life to you. I get up before the sun. I stay in my office and translate and share, contemplate, and provide insights for Israel so that you can return to Yahowah and come back home. And I do this 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, and have done it now for 23 years. So this is very important to Yahowah. In fact, it's one of those things that is so unique that in all of human history, Yahowah has never provided more than one spiritual endorsement for anyone, even Dowd. The Spirit of Yahowah, singular. Ruach Kodesh came upon him when he was 8 years old and never left him. In this case, according to Yashayah, he presents the whole story of the Choder in the 11th chapter, this stem off the main branch. The main branch is Dowd. The 7 spirits of Yahowah empower the Choder, enable him, embolden him, enlighten him. So Yahowah has never done that before. Now,
it tells you also how important it is to him.
Yes, and there was a number of reasons how important it is to him.
Yeah.
The fact that there is no time left for an alternative. If we didn't begin this project 23 years ago, the 35 books that sit on the shelf at yadayah.com to bring his people home, to awaken them to these events, would not exist. We wouldn't be broadcasting these programs now about them to you if we didn't begin 23 years ago. There's no time for a redo, for a mulligan, if you're a golfer. You are, Kirk.
Yeah.
The other reason is that over time, I think, we humans have deteriorated mentally. We're just not as sharp as we once were. We have access to more information. We just don't process it as well as we used to. And I may not have been the prime choice. There, he's worked with the likes of Moshe, whose character was sublime. He's worked with Dode, who was the most brilliant and articulate man who ever lived. I'm far from that. So maybe he has the seven spirits just because, well, this guy needed
just a lot to do. I mean, look, this must be, if you had to do all your insights, all the big insights, just the A material, it'd take a month of these shows just to state them all. It's that many.
I think there is a likelihood that there are lots of reasons that God did this. And part of it is that he's just not going to take the chance that we're not going to work well together and get this accomplished. So many souls. And indeed, the whole human experience is riding on this. Yahowah has never been wrong on a prophecy, and he has predicted that these harvests will occur and that the red heifer will perform and the adulterous woman will be cleaned and that he and Dode will return and that we will camp out together beginning on Sukkah. He has said he's going to do that. This is the only reason that becomes possible. So it came about when Achab saw Elia. Elia means Yahweh is God. That Achab, woeful father of the brethren, said to him, "Is this you troubler who causes chaos, confusion, anguishing, and disassociating Yisrael?" The king, the man who was full of himself, that said, "I have a divine right to rule." The man who was even more religious than he was political. He called Elia the troubler. He called Elia the one who was confusing, the one who disassociated Yisrael from God. The opposite was true. He knew it. We know it. And the same is true today, which is why Yahowah is so opposed to religion and politics and those who advance them. Now, while Satan likes to confuse by disparaging, particularly Yahowah, his prophets, and his witnesses, his accusations almost always reflect his own failings. In this way, the adversary possessed Paul and Muhammad to create the menacing religions of Christianity and Islam. Nevertheless, humanity has long favored deception and oppression. The history of civilization is the story of religious and political control, all leading to war and plundering and enslaving others. The history of man is an ugly one. Satan is, quite frankly, overrated. He and his minions would lose on this day when intelligently and forthrightly opposed with words. I keep on telling all of those I encounter on social media, use your words wisely. If you know Yahowah and what he is offering, what he is expecting in return from us, what he really despises and what he loves, and if you understand these horrible myths that have been woven together in religion and politics, then you can wield words effectively. And on this day, Elia used his words, and he prevailed. Israel needs to do the same thing today before it is too late.
Yes.
So, this is as it will be again on September 24th, 2033. Satan's going to lose again in our final confrontation. And as I say, he knows that it's over for him, but he's going to play his last card. And in his last card, he gets to lash out at me. And it's going to give him great pleasure before it is his undoing. On this day, Elia knew what to say against the political and religious leadership of Israel. And the reason for that is he was informed. And it's essential to be informed if you want to be an effective spokesperson. And he answered, Nah, it's not me who has troubled, confused, or estranged Israel, but you and your father's household, by neglecting, rejecting, and abandoning the instructive conditions pursuant to the relationship with Yahowah. You have followed after the Lord's. Powerful statement, because what it says is that the political leader of Israel was rotten to the core, that he was misleading the people. And he misled them by neglecting and abandoning, forsaking, and foregoing the mitzvah, which are the instructive conditions pursuant to the relationship with Yahowah. And they chose the lords to Yahowah. Balaam. If you refer to your God as the Lord,
You're in trouble.
You're in trouble, because that's Satan. And the reason that Balaam, the Lord, is Satan is because Satan wants to lord over man. Yahowah doesn't. He wants to lift man up as a father raises a child. He wants to control man. Yahowah doesn't. He offers the free will. He wants us to choose to love him, not to be compelled. Satan wants to own, to possess. Yahowah doesn't want to do either of those things. He wants to give away, providing us with this inheritance and enjoying the fact that we are free, emancipated, when we're empowered and enriched by him. They are opposites. That's why when people refer to their God as the Lord, I say, and then I'm sorry for you, but go away. You are
You're the trouble.
You're in serious trouble. You're worshiping the devil. Well, this was the Babel effect, tidbits of truth mingled with prolific lies to facilitate the integration of politics and religion. This is Satan's stock in trade. And through it all, the covenant, the bereth, is neglected. The Torah is rejected, and Yahowah and Dod are forsaken so that the Lord can rise in their stead. So now, send forth, assembling together unto me all of Yisrael to Har Ha-Carmel, the mount of the garden, along with the 450 prophets of the Lord, of Baal, and the 400 prophets of the Asherah, the beneficial relationships. Asherah is the queen of heaven, the mother of God. In the Babylonian and Canaanite religion, she is the basis of Easter. She's a pagan goddess associated with Venus. She is the Madonna child. She is the Roman Catholic Mary. Collectively, they had 850 religious stalwarts, and Yahowah had one. That's not really very fair odds, is it?
Yeah, it needed more.
We're more accustomed today by about 7,900,000,000 to a handful representing Yahowah.
Only needs one.
This, I'm not sure, was really fair odds, but nonetheless, this is how the game was played on this particular day. And it is astonishing that there's just little details here that are delightful, that this meeting was on Har Ha-Carmel, the Mount of the Garden.
Yeah.
It was not on Moriah in the heart of Jerusalem. This was in the far end of the Jezreel Valley.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that as a result of the reenactment of this just 9 years from now, the remnant of Yisrael is going to be taken into the garden. We're going to return to the garden together. And Yahowah is going to restore the earth and the conditions of the garden. And so he's going to perform this great miracle for the purpose of taking us back to the garden, just as we go back to this story to understand what's going to happen. Well, that's not the end of the statement. So let me go back and read the whole thing. So now send forth, assembling together unto me all Yisrael. This means that all Yisrael was corrupted by religion. To Har Ha-Carmel, the mount of the garden, along with the 450 prophets of the Lord, Baal, and the 400 prophets of the Asherah, the beneficial relationships, the Queen of Heaven, the Mother of God, in the Babylonian and Canaanite religions, who eat at Isabel's, that is Jezebel. Her name means worships the Lord table. The beast of Baal dwells with me is another definition of the name. The controlling Lord is exalted. It is from alas, a howling beast, and Zabal is honored and exalted while dwelling, and Baal, the Lord. The last word is table. They dine at Jezebel's table. Malachim rulers, 1 Kings 18:19. False gods are nurtured and feast at the tables of religious and political despots. Ahab and Jezebel were prime examples of institutionalized evil. These relative members, or I should say relative numbers, are actually far more favorable, we were hinting at earlier, because Yahweh was accustomed to defending himself from false gods against much greater odds than this. Today it is more like, well, at least 1,000,000 to 1, sometimes 1,000,000,000 to 1. When it began, it was, well, at the time there were 7 billion people on the planet, it was 7 billion to 1. With the religious overwhelmingly outnumbering Yahweh's witnesses. But then, again, when the prophets were only part of this dire picture. Corrupted by their leaders, the Israelites had become incurably religious. It was the nature of the Israelites really from the beginning. During the Exodus, they didn't even hear what Moshe had to say to them about his meetings with Yahweh, and they were already building a religious edifice in the golden calf. They never stopped being religious. It is God's primary complaint against his people. It's why they've stayed estranged for this 3,480 years, is because of their propensity to be religious. Judaism is a curse on Jews. So the preponderance of the people favored Baal. And his cohort, Asherah, the goddess of beneficial relationships, Asher is one of Yahweh's favorite terms. It's a verb, it's a preposition, it's a relative pronoun, it is a proper name, it is all manner of positive things. It's the word that I first came across, that I translated before any other in 2 Samuel 7. And it is exceedingly enlightening, and therefore Hasatan has corrupted it to apply to his cohort, his consort, if you will. The question Eliah poses and the answer he provides at the conclusion of this following statement should be, I think, plastered on every door and home, synagogue and church the world over. For this alone, we have been rewarded for just having delved into this great showdown between the Lord and God. This also foreshadows what's going to occur. In the final debate between Yada and Satan, both will reveal their nature before the remnant of Israel. Yada will use words to expose Halal bin Shakar as the Lord of Babel, and then offer his life to save Israel from Satan's delusions. Satan is going to equivocate, and he's going to prevaricate while continuing to posture the absurd notion that he is God. Then he will take the life of his last victim in full view of Israel, which will be his undoing, because Yahweh's life is going to be transformative. Not because of him, but because of what Yahweh does with it. And when this occurs on Teruah in 2033, Eliah will reprise the same speech, at least up to the point of asking how much longer, because there will be no need for that question at this point. And Achab reached out to all the children of Israel and assembled the prophets on Har Carmel, the Mount of the Garden. Then Eliah approached and presented himself to all of the people. And he said, "For how much longer will you waver, vacillate, and fail to engage over the two opposing views? If Yahweh is God Almighty, choose to walk after him. But if it is the Lord, make the choice to follow after him." However, the people did not respond or reply to him. If you were to ask the same question, give the same hypothesis to Israel today, there may be 1 in a million of them
Mhm.
that would choose to walk after Yahweh. This must change. Too many of them would follow the lords of religion, the Hashems, the nameless God of Judaism. Far too many. And on this day, they couldn't even answer the question. I would say that as we go forward, that will also be true. So I asked those who favor Judaism, Christianity, and Islam over Yahweh, what do you call your God? Is it the Lord or Yahweh? Do you know whose side you're on? Well, turning a deaf ear to God cannot be resolved, nor can anyone fix stupid. Even when the presence of one of God's most articulate and brilliant prophets, everyone was dumbfounded. Not a single Jew had the courage or character to stand up for what was right. And that is Satan's greatest victory. The reason that he is the author and the advocate of religion. Faith intoxicates the mind. It corrupts the conscience, often irreversibly, paralyzing and incapacitating its victims. You could no more awaken and save a rabbi than the man on the moon, nor any of the rabbi's victims amongst the Haredim. You can't save a Muslim or a devout Christian with the truth. They will reject it and turn to their beliefs and false prophets. Of course, religion spreads virally, and it very quickly becomes a deadly plague, and it envelops most everyone. For those not similarly lost, for the 20% of Yehudim in particular in Yisrael not rendered comatose by politics and religion, this is the most life-altering proposition anyone will ever encounter. With the referendum between God and the Lord, Yahweh and Satan, it is essentially unfathomable that most people cannot and will not distinguish between them. For most, the Lord is their God. They unwittingly worship Satan and irrationally view Yahweh as their adversary. You mention Yahweh's name to a religious person and watch their expression. Witness their response. They despise it. In this crowd on this day, there wasn't a single person who could correctly distinguish between the Lord and God. And it remains true throughout Israel even now. But time is running out to figure this one out. The most incredulous part of this lingering conundrum, Kirk, is how much more rational and rewarding one option is over the other. Yahweh has proven through prophecy that he is God, and he has demonstrated that he can be trusted. By contrast, based upon the contradictory and irrational routes found in the Talmud, the New Testament, and the Quran, the Lord has demonstrated that he isn't God and that he cannot be trusted, and it's blatantly obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Yahweh is offering to perfect our souls, make us immortal, adopt us into his family, raise us as his children, enrich our lives, enlighten our minds, empower our souls, liberating us to explore the entire universe that he wants to give us as a gift. Satan would deny all of that, beguiling the religious into being controlled by his delusional protestations. The best thing that Satan can offer is death. the worst is eternal incarceration in Sheol with him. It's not much of a choice.
No.
Religion versus relationship. Yahowah has Moshe, he has Dod, he has Eliah, he has Yashaya. Yeah, well, today he's got Yada speaking for him. While Satan deploys the likes of Paul, Akiba, Maimonides, and Muhammad. His referendum is, this referendum, I should say, is the Torah, the Nabi, the Mizmor, God's teaching and guidance, his prophetic presentations and the lyrics to these songs, versus the New Testament, the Talmud, and the Quran. It is brilliant versus stupid, right versus wrong, life versus death, and the truth versus lies. All God asks of us is to stop vacillating between these two contradictory and irreconcilable options. If you don't like Yahweh, he's fine with that. Just don't confuse people by pretending that God is the Lord of your religion. Stop pretending that Jesus Christ is some kind of God. Stop pretending that Hashem is God's name or Adonai. For good grief, Allah spends all of his time in hell in the Quran and is a sadistic moron. Don't degrade Yahweh's reputation by calling him Allah. Are you out of your mind? Obviously, those who do not know Yahowah, and therefore they are unknown to God. Then Eliah said to the people, I am the only one remaining, the lone remaining prophet of Yahowah. I am the only one. And the prophets of the Lord are 450 individuals. When I began, Kirk, 23 years ago, I had made the same statement. I'm the only one. Now, I'm not a prophet. I am simply a witness. It wasn't appropriate for me to be a prophet, because if I was a prophet, then I would have to write things down sufficiently in advance of their fulfillment, and then only at their fulfillment would anyone have validation of prophetic inspiration. And since so many of the things that I'm speaking about take place in year 6,000 Yah, 2033, upon Yahweh's return, it's too late
to do anything
for anyone to benefit from the validation. Yeah. So it would have been stupid for Yahweh to say, what I need is another prophet. Plus, he's already told us
the whole story
through Gabriel, Dod, that there would be no more prophets.
Yeah.
And so what he did is really ingenious. He says, I'm going to enable someone to read all of my existent prophetic literature. And he is going to demonstrate that everything you ever needed to know was in those texts. And I've already validated that those texts I inspired, because they're filled with prophecies that were written long ago and have been validated. And so by having this individual read them and make sense of them and communicate them to you, I've done a lot of things. Now, first, I have proven that what he's telling you is true.
Yes.
And beyond that, I have shown you that it was always there for you to know, and yet you neglected me. Powerful. And the way that he approached it. Well, it's far worse today because, well, there are none as it relates to prophets. And there hasn't been a prophet for 2,500 years. Over that vast expanse of time, not a single Yisraelite has been willing to reject religion and politics and listen to God to the extent Yahweh requires for someone to speak for him, for Yahweh to speak through them as a prophet to his people. Not one. As a result, Jews speak for many rabbis. When they cite something, it's always in the name of Rabbi so-and-so.
Yeah.
But never for Yahweh. And since there has never been a Gentile prophet, humanity has endured a very long intermission, one consistent with Hoshea's declaration. This dearth of acceptable candidates among Israelites is so bad that the next time Yahowah speaks to his people through a prophet, the return of Eliah, he will be sending Eliah back as one of his two witnesses. He has to reconstitute a prophet for there to be one. Now, he picked an especially remarkable man. So it is telling that the religious have continually and universally worshiped their God as the Lord. This is curious indeed, because there are only three ways that the God of the Canaanites, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, the Greeks, Romans, Roman Catholics, and Muslims, and even Israelites became addressed in a manner so contrary to Yahweh's nature. Every one of them had a Lord. Every one of them, their chief God was called the Lord. They were all worshiping Satan. One of the funny things, you know what the word is for Lord in the Arabic Quran?
Is it like Baal or Baal?
No,
Just
no,
Lord.
no. Okay, so I'll back up and say, who was it that sold Muhammad Talmud readings so that his Quran sounded religious?
That was one of the rabbis, but I don't know his name.
Rabbi. Well, I'm going to ask you again, after repeating rabbi, what do you think the Quranic name is for Lord?
Rabbi.
Rabbi.
Wow. How did they get away with that?
The rabbis actually convinced Muhammad to name their God after them.
And he took it.
And he did.
Bit.
And he bit. And it's there all the way through. It's rabbi. It's one of the great jokes of well, not very funny, because of course Muhammad got really pissed off at them when they threatened to expose him, and he annihilated them. And the continued hatred of Jews continues to express itself in horrible ways, like it did on 10/7 of 23.
Yeah.
Anyway, there is no possibility that pagans selected this title because they saw their God lording over them. So, if so, by continuing to use this title, the petitioner is implying that the pagan deities are real, and yet a person might as well call their god Baal, Amen-Ra, Adonis, Jupiter, Dionysus, Apollo, or Zeus, even Jesus or Allah, should they continue to acknowledge the Lord. They're all the same. You were going to say, Kirk?
Well, I was working on a glossary the other day, and I had to find something in which I don't go to very often, but Strong's Concordance. Mm-hmm. And I'm flipping through, and there is, once again, something that reminded me from when I started, when I looked up Lord. And it was Yahowah, thousands and thousands and thousands of times in every text. Yahowah. And then and once you know how to write it and do it in pictographs, you go, this is not Lord. He doesn't lift you up. You're not standing up. You're bowing down. It bothers me to this day. I just go, how can you be so stupid? Well, I know we just talked about stupid for about an hour. But
the two great crimes that the religious have committed, particularly religious Jews. The first was they erased Yahweh's name.
Yes.
It is a stunning crime that has had debilitating consequences for God's people. We are trying to right that wrong. And the second is they wrote Dod, the Messiah and Son of God, our Savior, out of their lives and out of their story.
Yes.
And as a result, it was possible for the likes of Paul to counterfeit him, to create a crude variation through replacement foolology. And so the myth of Jesus is nothing but a counterfeit of Dod. And the rabbis didn't stop them because they had already discounted him. So it's one of the great tragedies of Jewish history. So we need to wrap up here just in a moment. We try to limit our programs typically to 30 minutes. This is the family hour with the Shabbat program, so we'll go a little longer and have a full hour's worth of program, but we're very close to that moment. So I'll just continue by saying that false prophets and pagan priests, the self-serving and self-aggrandizing kings, queens, dictators, have all leagued together to create gods in their image, so that they could use them to justify lording over and controlling everyone else. My Lord and my Lord shared the same title because they were set from the same cloth, same self-serving, fabricated cloth. Just as the Christian Jesus was shaped by Paul, an egomaniac, to serve as a counterfeit of Dode, and Allah was Muhammad's alter ego, reflecting his sadistic nature. Humankind has long anthropomorphized their gods and goddesses. In particular, those in charge, those lording over others, name them after themselves, bequeathing their gods with their preferred title, the Lord. Christianity and Islam are just the worst of a bad example, with a dead and tortured God-man on a stick and a purely demonic deity. But you look at all of the ancient gods and goddesses. How were they carved? How were they depicted? You're an artist.
Yeah, it's usually a person, or they're a wild, strong animal or something.
All in human form.
Mostly,
all in human form. Some of them were a combination of humans and animals to create a religious mythos, but religious gods are projections of the worst of humanity.
Yeah, got to be identifiable with the king.
Yes. Third, Satan may have chosen this moniker for himself because it serves his interests. It replaces Hasatan, the adversary title that he is trying to dismiss while positioning him to be worshipped as if he were a god. But if so, a prayer to the Lord is a plea to Satan. The title reflects the adversary's desire to be seen lording over Yahowah and controlling his creation. So as we move to Eliah's next statement, we find yet another harbinger of what is to come. And this will be our last passage for this evening. We'll pick up this again next week. And hopefully the picture and the whole sound and presentation of what we're doing this evening worked flawlessly. I know my wife Leah and Joe worked on this. You got with it very early today to be prepared for it. So we have our fingers crossed that it all turned out well.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
We want to offer 2 fully mature and productive bulls for ourselves and let them select for themselves a single preferred bull for their test. Cut it and set it on the wood planks, but put no fire on it. Then he said, I myself will engage to prepare that which is associated with the one bull, uniquely productive and mature bull, Eth Par Ha Echad, and I will offer him as a gift, over and above the wooden beams, but I will not set fire to it. Malachim Rulers, 1 Kings 18:23. Oh, Kirk, there is so much that is profoundly important about the story God is telling us and how this is a harbinger of what's going to occur just 9 years from now on the Temple Mount, on Teruah, in year 6,000 Yah. That I think this is a good place for us to pause, and we'll pick this up this time next week. So, Kirk, thank you for joining me. This has been the Yahowah blog, the presentation on the Shabbat for the Covenant family. And I am your host, Craig Wynn. Good night.
Good night.